What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Method in the Madness. This is the podcast that not only delves deep into design and creativity, but also leadership, productivity, and personal development. And this is episode 9, and this is the episode I get to sit down with a guy called Andrew Dobbie. And Andrew is the founder and CEO of MadeBrave, a creative brand agency based out of Glasgow, who work with a variety of different clients such as Van Gogh, Bunnahabhain Whiskey. They've worked with BBC in the past, the Gregor, and all these kind of guys. And it was great to get Andrew on the show. And it's probably no surprise that we had absolutely tons to talk about, but we cover a variety of different things, mainly his story of MadeBrave, starting a business at a time where he only had £1,000 in his bank account and a 2-week, baby on the way as well. We discussed branding at length and whether or not we think branding is losing its personality and people are just following trends. We also chat about what we think makes a great leader too, and also how to cope with the stress and responsibility of running your own business. And finally, we also chat about Andrew and Lewis from Campfire's own podcast called Just a Chat With, and who would be his dream guest. And Just a Chat With is available on all popular podcast platforms if you want to check it out. But I've always admired Andrew and the work he's done, and as well as the work of MadeBrave. So it's great to finally, sit down with Andrew, talk shop, and really pick his brain. So without much further ado, please welcome Andrew Dobbie to Method in the Madness. Andrew Dobbie, thank you very much for having me at MadeBrave HQ to record the podcast, nonetheless, bright and early on a Monday morning.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
MadeBrave are a creative brand agency that you started yourself back in 2012,
2020, yeah.
But have kind of grown year on year. And you've got how many staff now?
In MadeBrave, we've got about 35, 36 at the
Wow.
moment.
But how did MadeBrave come to fruition back in 2012?
So I was a designer and photographer, pre-MadeBrave, I suppose. I studied multimedia systems back, so I'm like 38 now, so when I was kind of 18, 19, so what's that, 20 years ago? Just when the internet was kind of figuring itself out, that's when I studied at uni, and I kind of did one of these kind of multimedia courses that was kind of a little mix of everything. I decided very quickly, or realised very quickly, that I was creative rather than a developer as such,
Yeah.
And so from leaving uni, I worked in a small agency in Glasgow for ex-Scotland and Celtic footballer Paul McStay. And I worked with Paul for 8 years in an agency, maybe sort of 7 or 8 people. And back in kind of 2000, well, it was actually 2011, when I left my job, my son was just born. He was kind of like 2 weeks old, and I didn't have much money. I probably had kind of like just almost I suppose 1 month's salary in my bank, and I thought, what a bloody good time to leave your job and start a business.
What was the defining factor to leave your job then?
I think
you just had thinking. I mean, I don't have kids, but I can't imagine if I had a 2-week-old baby, I'd be leaving my job anytime soon.
Yeah, I usually tell that bit, and people say, surely that's the time you sort of stay in your job when you make it more secure. But no, I loved my job. I loved working with Paul, and it was a great company, but it was kind of money driven. I'd realised, I suppose, I was going to have to provide. My wife was going to be off work.
Yeah.
And I was like, the company was, it was a smaller company, so it couldn't afford to pay me anymore. So I thought, well, I need to do something about this and kind of take it into my own hands. And I think when you've got the pressure of that baby and I could like finally see him,
yeah, you make it work.
You're like, shit, I better do something. So I didn't set out to go and create a business, really. I went out and I thought I'll be a freelance designer. So I knew I could design, I knew I could do photography, and I thought, well, I'll do a bit of both. And I thought I could maybe make a couple £100 a day, and that would, and if I could get 2 or 3 days filled in a week, I'd maybe be making more than I'd been earning. So.
Oh, awesome. And looking back at those early days then, what would you have said is kind of maybe one of the most worthwhile investments, whether it's a piece of kit or, just time that you've associated to something or
Sure.
energy or whatever it may be?
Yeah, well, I suppose, very quickly I got quite busy and realized that this was going to turn into a business and it wasn't going to be a freelance gig. I think within a year, we had 6 people in the team. Within 2 years, I think there was 16. And so there's a lot of learning that goes on while that's happening.
Yeah,
Quite
as well as like responsibility as well.
Yeah, and I was very naive to business. I suppose I didn't know, a lot about business and figuring out all the things like lawyers, accountants, limited companies,
Yeah.
and all the stuff that comes with it. But I think what I did early on that maybe a lot of people that run creative businesses don't do is that I came off the tools.
Mm.
So, I've seen a lot of creative businesses maybe struggle to grow or scale or, progress. And it's often, and I don't think it's a bad thing, it's a personal choice. Often, if it's launched by a creative person, which I am, they kind of want to keep creative control for as long as
Yeah.
possible and be the creative director and be the name. And,
Yeah.
and I think I realized that it was not going to be manageable. I mean, at some points during that early growth phase, I was doing all that. So I was meeting clients, I was doing jobs, I was running the creative, but I realized there wasn't enough space in my head. There's not a lot of space in there for a lot of things. So, I was going home, I was having stress headaches and such like that. So
Mhm.
I realized I'm going to have to give up one or the other thing
Yeah.
here. And being a sole founder, I didn't have a partner or anyone else. So I think quite early on, within a year or so, I came off doing the creative.
All right.
And I think, sort of going back to your question, I think that was one thing for me that then allowed me to concentrate on growing it as a business and not, so then I was able to do more because I was able to put people in place and let them have the autonomy to run the creative, which actually made them empowered, which means I got better results. So rather than me trying to do half running a business and half doing creative,
Yeah.
I've suddenly got someone who's fully loving doing all the creative, and I'm going to run the business. So
Like, how was that transition? I suppose because the creative bit is the bit that you knew how to do. I'm
yeah.
not saying that you didn't know how to run a business.
No, sure.
Clearly
No,
you do.
no. I definitely didn't. There's been many mistakes along the way.
But when you actually made that kind of cut the cord and kind of move
Yeah.
into kind of the fully kind of running business role,
Mhm.
how was that transition? Like what were some of the kind of early lessons, I suppose, in terms of making the mistakes and running a
Yeah.
business?
Well, there's
Pretty
lots of
scary.
mistakes to make. I'm working my way through them all, and I think once you work through them all, that you eventually become
Like
an expert.
scout badges.
Exactly. But yeah, I think there's lots of mistakes. But I think what I've realised is that, again, someone early on said to me, Andrew, when running this business, and this sounds really egotistical, but I don't mean it this way. Like, it's like you should have nothing to do. Like, your desk should be empty. And I was like, how can that? And and anyone who's starting a business right now or in the beginning few years, they'll be like, yeah, right, this just can't work.
It's never gonna happen.
But hear me out. Like, they said to me, like, if you've got as kind of running or leading a business, you should have a blank desk, and what you should be working to do is look at everything that you're currently doing, and then figure out how eventually you can strip that off and have someone around you that's better at it than you. So if you imagine early on, I was managing accounts, I was doing the creative, I was doing the finance, I was doing operations. So eventually I got someone to lead the creative. So suddenly one thing off my desk. And then if something creative lands on my desk, I was able to say to that person, that's your bit. Then eventually there's too much operationally to do. So I employed an operations director, and I'd have that person until now I've got a financial controller, I've got operations, I've got office management, I've got marketing, I've got all these pieces that I've been doing. And now if something lands for me, I'm like, they're better than me. The only worry now is, though, if it all fails, I'm rubbish at everything. so I now don't know how to do anything, which is the problem.
Well, it doesn't look like it's going that way, that's for certain. Looking again back at the kind of early days, can you remember a specific pitch win or a project that it finally felt like it was all coming together, or you still waiting for that moment?
Is this actually together? Yeah. No, I think you're always waiting for that moment. I think there's sometimes you get like you get something happens and you go, wow, we've fucking arrived. This is it. We've done it. But then usually when something good happens, on the other side, there's a challenge that happens at the same time that brings you right back down to earth. And so, it's often hard to stop and celebrate. And I think you should. I'm a big believer actually. And, when times are good, try and celebrate with everyone and make sure we all appreciate it, as well as when times are bad. Because when things go bad, they can go really bad, and you can get really, it can be tough. So, no, I think, I'm quite a visual person, and I think when you're growing a business or creating something, to have, and if you're trying to lead a team or lead people, customers, employees, whatever that may be, you need to create a vision. And so I've always tried to create a vision of where we're going, what we're trying to do. Now, sometimes you get there quicker than you thought, and that was the case for me with MadeBrave. I think, I got there much faster than I thought I could, and then. And you were like, "Oh, this was us. This was us meant to. This is when we'd have arrived."
I need to make a new vision.
But then you're like, yeah. And then you can sometimes like wander around for a while. You're like, you're meant as an entrepreneur. I can't even spell the word, but like, you're often meant to have a clear vision all the time. And sometimes you get there quicker, and then you have to spend a couple of years, months, whatever it may be, finding the next one. And so, so I think you arrive, and then you have to refigure what arriving means. So, so we're going into a next stage of growth at the moment. We're just about to take a new studio, and I've got quite a clear vision of my head now of filling that out and growing the team to fit that. And, and I've got a kind of backwards engineered plan to how to do that. But yeah, I'm sure I'll get there, and then I'll be like, you just never feel you've arrived. I think. I don't think.
I think that's always the sign of like a good, don't know what the word is, creative entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you are. It's like once you even as a designer, you always kind of dream of being creative director or whatever it is, and then when you get there, you're like, oh, I wonder what else I can do.
Yeah, you always want the bigger brand or the bigger project, and then you do it, and you're like,
that would be the best project to have on our roster. Then you get it, and you're like, what other projects can we get?
That was that.
You kind of figure out that, it's kind of funny. I was saying this on another podcast where basically, if you told me in uni that I'd be working with some of the clients that I've gotten to work with over the years, that I've been very lucky, don't get me wrong, to work with, if you told me in uni I was going to be working with them, I'd be like, there's not a chance I'll ever be working with them. Yeah, now that I've worked with them, I'm kind of like, they weren't the best client to work with. So I kind of prefer working. It's not always like the kind of big flashy names that are the best brands to work with sometimes, So you can always kind of have a good project no matter what it was, or like what good client, whatever it is.
I mean, I always say to our guys here that, because you sometimes hear creative people, me being one, saying, oh, I never get the best clients or the best briefs or the best projects. And, and I think there's that thing where you are always looking for the bigger and better. But I think no matter what size or scale a client, budget or project is, as a creative, it's our job to turn it into the best as it can be. So, I think we were speaking the other day about a web form, and like a web form could be seen as a really as a rubbish brief or rubbish job, but you can make that the best web form that no one's ever created. And I think that's with anything, people never going to come with it. You have to turn that opportunity. And
And was it difficult when you kind of stepped away from the kind of creative role? It's your business, and you've got this kind of vision and passion for what you want the work to be. Was it difficult to kind of let that go and then just like let the person have the responsibility initially, or was it quite an easy transition just to go, you know what, like it was like an on-off switch? I can't even be half involved, because I know even for myself, sometimes you have like, you see the brief yourself, so you start painting an idea of what you would like to see it come out as. And then sometimes, working with different teams in the past, it's just like, that's not kind of what I thought was it going to be, but you don't, it still answers the brief. So it's not wrong by any means of the imagination. It's just not what I would have done. So did you find that difficult?
Yeah, I think there's that challenge. I mean, where we probably differ is that you're a great designer and I'm an average designer. And, I very quickly started to realize when I started to build teams, I was like, shit, everyone's better than me. So this makes more sense for me not to be doing it.
It's like that famous Steve Jobs quote, like, hire people
Totally.
to get them to tell you what to do rather
Yeah.
than the other way around.
No, and I love it now because we have all these great people in the team, and I get to learn a little bit from all of them, and so I become a really nice generalist of knowing lots. I'm always like
Yeah.
get to suck all the knowledge out of each new person into the team's head, and I get a little bit of it all. But I truly I get as much pleasure now seeing great work go out under the MadeBrave or Campfire name. It doesn't necessarily need to be me doing it. I mean, I still input, like sometimes there's only so much looking at Excel and crying that you can do in a week. So sometimes I'm like, please I'm coming into this brainstorm. I want to be part of like directing something or,
Yeah.
and so I enjoy that. And I enjoy the buzz of, presenting to clients and making ideas and bringing them to life. So, and often, sometimes I'm like, guys, I'm just going to shoot some stuff for social media today for MadeBrave. I just want to
Have
for our own
some
brand,
outlet
let
of
me
some
just
kind.
because when you're creative, you know yourself, like there's something in you that just
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
stop, and your brain needs to.
You just get irritable.
Yeah,
It's kind of, even moving up, I suppose, kind of seniority in kind of design roles. The ironic bit is that you become less and less hands-on design, and then it's like that kind of imposter moment when you actually go back to the program. You're like, where do I start again?
I know. I was in Photoshop the other day, right? And I was like, and I'm trying to scale an object, right? I'm trying to transform it.
Oh, don't get me started.
And I'm pressing shift. And when I stopped designing, you press shift and it would stay in the same proportion. And I'm pressing shift and it's going all over the place. I'm like, what the? I've lost control of my brain to hands. And I'm like running over the designers. Someone tell me what's happened. They're like, it's now the opposite.
Yeah.
Adobe, if you're listening,
yeah,
why would you do that to us? Why?
Just have the option like as a checkbox instead. But
why?
I know. I suppose in a world where agencies specifically are apparently struggling because of the gig economy, because of clients taking things in house and having their own in-house teams, MadeBrave seem to still be, like normally it's the kind of smaller guys that get pinched first, but you just keep growing and growing and growing, and you're not a small agency anymore by any stretch of the imagination. Why do you think, in a kind of economy where things are kind of getting a bit tighter and a bit more competitive, that you've managed to always kind of succeed and grow?
Yeah. I'm sure there's multiple things. I mean, it doesn't come without its challenges. I mean, it's, you've got a kind of, you are growing, but at all times you're going, you're that whole, if we're not in film just now, but like that whole squiggly line for growth is kind of what happens, that you go back and forth. But I suppose, the market always changes and adapts, and sometimes like this in-house thing is in trend, sometimes it's agency, and sometimes and I think we've obviously seen the impact that sometimes you go to a pitch and you're pitching against a freelancer, and obviously you can't compete with costs with a freelancer, because as soon as you've got a business, you've got a whole ton of
things you need to cover,
that you need to pay for. But sometimes, I mean, I think what I tried to do was, I'm a big believer that people don't like to be sold to, but they like to buy, right? And I thought with MadeBrave, I'm going to concentrate on growing a brand that people want to buy from. So, because, we create great work, and I always kind of felt that should be a given for an agency. All agencies, if you're in business, you should be creating great work.
Yeah.
So I thought, how else can I separate mine? Because I'm going to make sure I've got a really high level of work, but that just needs to be the given. So I kind of thought, on top of that, I'm going to really concentrate on growing a brand, and I'm going to use the knowledge I have for growing consumer or customer brands and do it for myself, which is a challenge because anyone that works in an agency knows it's it's fast paced, time short, you've always got a million things happening. But I think for me, I just prioritized that this is always going to happen because we're always going to be here. And if you put, it's what you're saying to customers, if you put the time in, you put the money in, you put the work behind a brand, well, it brings back value. Now, sometimes that doesn't come back in the first couple of years. So maybe
it's not always pounds and pennies either.
Exactly. But like I'm now sort of seeing dividends for it now, because now as MadeBrave has grown, we don't need to go out and look for business. Like we've got so much inbound business coming to us that, in fact, that's almost a problem that we have to filter that to who's got the right budgets and such like. And,
of course,
So I think
nice problem to have, though.
Yeah, no, yeah, of course, yeah.
And kind of what's the plan for MadeBrave moving forward in your I know visions can obviously be internal, so I'm not expecting you to tell me that. But
Sure.
is the
I tell
kind of
everyone anything.
is
You ask me anything, I'm an open book.
is the sky the limit, or are you wanting to kind of remain UK based, or what's your
Sure.
kind of grand plan for MadeBrave, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I'm a pretty ambitious person. Team all feel pretty ambitious as well, and it kind of almost feels like we're just getting started. I mean, last year we formed a group, merged with Campfire, who's a content production agency over in Edinburgh. So we've now got another 10 people in the team. So as a group, there's kind of 45 of us, and as I mentioned, we're about to move space downstairs, which
Yeah,
will
that's
give
exciting.
capacity in Glasgow for 60. Over in Edinburgh, we've got capacity for maybe about 20, and then we've just opened a small office in London as well. So
Cool.
yeah, no, I'm kind of we're kind of on that. We're sort of, we've got a general idea of where we're going, but it involves getting bigger. I think I still feel like there's more I want to do. There's more teams. There's kind of skill sets within the team that I don't think we have. That I think if we had, we'd provide a better service offering.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, just getting started.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You obviously just quickly mentioned the Born Originals group there, which
Yeah.
is yourself and Campfire. How did you and the Campfire guys first come together?
Sure. So I've been friends with Lewis, who's the founder of Campfire. So while I've been on the MadeBrave journey, kind of over the last 7-8 years, he was building his team. So Lewis is kind of like, he's like a child genius. He's like 23. He's 23, but he's more mature than me. And Lewis had sort of been building Campfire for the last 3 years previous. And me and him had been friends. We've been part of another organisation in Edinburgh called Power of Youth, which was kind of a group where kind of pulling business owners or entrepreneurs together that were all sort of values led. So we're very aligned in terms of values and actually looking after people and trying to create a nice working environment and a good thing and trying to do sort of greater good around. And so me and him had sort of been pals and some sort of following each other's stories, and I hugely respected Campfire's work. I mean, they produce world-class content, and I suppose likewise, Lewis had watched our journey. And last year, we kind of got to a point where, at MadeBrave, we'd concentrated on sort of building out. We do a lot of brand, we're obviously got a digital team, marketing, and for all these things to succeed, to have a website that people want to go to or a campaign that people are interested in, need great content. And, and likewise with Lewis, every time he produced a film or a piece of content, well, it needs to sit on a site or it needs to have a campaign wrapped around it. So we were kind of just talking and we were like, this maybe makes sense to join forces. And I think both of us as well had both been sole founders. So that being a sole founder can be quite a lonely place. My little violin out now. But no, it's really like it can be quite tough because when things aren't going great or you're having challenges in the business, if you've got no one to share with, and it's often even hard to share with your partners at home because they might be living totally different. Like my wife was kind of in kids clubs and kind of looking after Finn and and it's very different to just kind of switch heads back into kind of what's happening here. So I think for both of us it was quite the attraction of working with someone together. And someone said to me once as well, you can be rich or you can be king. So like if you're king, and you have it all, or if you kind of join forces, you can create a bigger, better thing, and you share that responsibility. So.
Yeah, awesome. Just moving on to, I suppose, kind of how MadeBrave kind of do things. I've seen you present before, and you kind of like to say that MadeBrave like to demystify the branding process. What do you mean by that? Like, I think I suppose for other listeners, like I can imagine what you mean by that. But what, in your own words, what do you mean by demystifying the branding process?
Well, I think branding can feel quite overwhelming and quite bamboozling. I think if you type how to make a brand or what's a brand into Google, you get like so much random crap and guff, and just it's hard to pick through it and try and figure out actually what's right and what's wrong. And I think like sometimes people wrap a lot of branding up with jargon and words that we don't understand. And I kind of say to the team, see, when you're talking to people, just make it really simple and then try and I'm a big believer giving knowledge away. So like MadeBrave as a brand, just constantly give it all away and try and teach it because it doesn't have to be as difficult. And I think if you do that, people are like, oh, and often they'll say, like, well, if you give it away, you also become some sort of knowledge thought leader
Yeah,
type
yeah.
thing as a brand, as a business. But also then people go, well, they must know about it, so I can't be bothered doing it. I'll pay them to do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, quite right. It's always one of these things where like everybody has their own kind of way of doing things, but much and such, we're all doing the same things.
Yeah.
Like they try and wrap it up a different way or
Yeah.
sell it for a different way.
Yeah,
and kinda,
exactly.
But you know,
Codify it into some sort of sellable thing, but it's all pretty similar. You
yeah.
know, yeah.
Kind of getting into more kind of branding stuff, like with everything that's moving towards super simple, sans serif, flat, vector based kind of branding. Like, do you personally feel, I suppose I'm maybe projecting my own thoughts onto you here, but do you personally feel that branding is kind of losing some of its personality in a way? Like, I don't know if you ever seen the graphic recently of like all the fashion brands
Yeah.
and like, you know, Yves Saint Laurent and all these kind of brands on one side, and then it's like their new logos and they almost look all identical, all
Yeah.
caps, sans serif typefaces, and they're just kind of like, they had all these lovely distinctive marks, and now they're just gone for like something super simple, which
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if it's going to stand the test of time. But
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be easy to become frustrated, right, as a designer. Because you're like, wow, why are they simplifying? And why is everyone But I can kind of see how it happens. And, you know, and it's like any type of fashion, these things come round about in trends. So I'm sure at some point they'll get fancier again and things will happen. But I mean, I think about branding more than just the identity, you know, and I think people can often get hung up just on the brand mark itself, the logo, and, you know, I think it can be easy to think, well, you know, it's losing its soul. But I think I always talk about branding as often like, you know, if you think of a person, you know, we've got personality, we've got tone of voice, you know, we've got values, we've got vision, we've got purpose. And these are all the underlying things that make a brand. And often the brand mark is like a face, right? So a human face is the thing that reminds you of all these traits that everyone have. And I think the brand mark in a business is just the piece that reminds us of all the other stuff that we've interacted with that brand. And I think brands just have to work that little bit harder now. That before they could only, you know, in times gone by, it was only the sort of visual identity facade that was there. But now we've got all these experiences, touch points. There's so much more to think about and kind of stuff that you've got to learn. But yeah, I think, you know, as a designer, sometimes a little bit of my soul drops out when you see, there could be so much more you could do with that.
This grand rebrand, and then you look at it, it's like, this has taken months in the making, and then you see like one of like, I suppose the kind of more popular ones that I saw recently, and it was like they're saying that it took them like 2 years or some shit like that. Was BT, and it's just.
I quite like the BT one though. I don't know. I'm in the minority.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like, I saw the mark. But this is the problem because that goes out on Twitter, and then like people are like,
the mob goes after
the mob goes, what is this? You know, how was that £1 million? But you're like,
they don't see the process involved.
Yeah, and then you don't see the full system of how it's going to roll out. And actually, when you look at the BT one, when you see the system, it's like, that's really nice. That's really clever. And the challenge is often, you know, as a designer, is to create a system that's going to work across a business of scale, you know, because when you're working, you know, with businesses that have got to roll that out across T-shirts, you know, all sorts of things.
Yeah,
it's
pylons, like everything.
Yeah, you can actually see why simplification of a brand mark.
Not having this
happens.
kind of weird rendered globe thing or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can imagine, I've never done any work for BT, but like playing with that brand has been quite a challenge as a designer, you know, like trying to replicate it and things. So
I always like sometimes you come across like, you know, you'll probably be the same being a creative person, but every now and again you'll come across a brand that has actually existed for ages and you've never really, you know, say if you got the brief to kind of rebrand that company, you wonder how they arrived at the logo that they got to. But it's such like a distinctive brand mark. You're like, well, like that you can't almost rebrand it. That is, you know, the brand mark for that company. I'm just trying to think of an example, but like, you know, you look at some kind of organizations and you go, I would never have done that. But like, it makes so much more sense because it's been around for years that you're just so used to it, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, no, I
like,
know. I mean, I can't think of one right now, but I know what you mean. Like, you would have never got there. Yeah.
We were kind of talking about this before we press record, and you're rattling your brain in preparation for the question. But when was the last time you saw a new brand or a rebrand that kind of grabbed your attention?
I think brands that seem to catch my attention now are when it's been wrapped up in some sort of experience that's really been really well thought through. So I think one that I can remember is Simba mattresses. I saw a piece of content on social. I'd never thought about buying a new mattress. You know, I wasn't interested, but I saw the content. I loved the piece of content, and I was showing it to my team. I'm like, look at that stuff. Then suddenly the remarketing was amazing because it wasn't showing me stuff I'd already seen. It started showing me stuff that was the next part of the journey, you know. And then, you know, eventually, after months and months of seeing it, I persuaded my wife that we needed a new mattress. I also managed to somehow bump into a photographer that had created content for Simba as well. So I kind of like, there was all these kind of things, you know,
external
influences. But then when I went onto the website and I bought the thing, the whole experience was amazing. Like from leaving those ads to landing there to purchasing it to when the thing arrived and it unfolded, the little messaging, the kind of micro copy, every single bit, even signing the finance agreement was enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, often brands kind of do all the front end stuff. And like, you know, like when you buy a camera, right, you get all this amazing marketing to get to buy the camera. Then you open the box and you're like, how do I fucking use this thing? And there's like a black and white, one color, horrible.
It's printed on the same kind of paper you get in like a Bible.
Yeah,
like
with
the
like
thinnest paper
with 40 languages in it and tiny text that you can't read. And I'm like it's often, you know, it feels like you need to do everything for the sale, but don't look after the customer once you've got them. And I think the Simba experience for me, and you know, if they're listening, I'm sure they'll be loving that. But like, the Simba experience for me was like, it was end to end, everything was great, and you know, and the mattress seemed nice as well. I'm not being paid by Simba, by the way.
So we went. So when we moved into our house, we were looking at kind of different mattresses and stuff as well, and then looking at all, you know, Casper and Simba and all this one, and then we went for the Emma mattress because that was her name. So it kind of made sense. We're like drawn to it because of that. So
it's funny, isn't it? Like as someone that's in marketing or a designer like me and yourself, like you're like a sucker for it. Like I find myself in the supermarket and I'm like buying beans and I'm like, I know it's the same beans in the Tesco value one and it is in the purple can, but I'm like, I need that one because it's been marketed better. You know?
No, you're fully aware of it, but you're also the biggest sucker in the world. I think for me, like we were chatting about this before, but is probably Notion, which is an app which, if you are a user of Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Trello, Basecamp, Jira, all these things that, you know, me, like my brain almost has an aneurysm when I open up a Jira ticket. Like it's just the most complex looking thing. Just it's meant to make my life easier, but for some reason it doesn't. I don't know why. It just like when I see like a Jira notification come into my email inbox, a small part of me dies. But basically Notion replaces all of them in a oneer, and it's super simple. The brand has got like a lovely kind of personality. These illustrations that almost look like they've been done by like an old Disney storyboarder kind of style. And the whole thing's just lovely. It's absolutely minimal, and my whole life is in it now. So I really hope they survive because like, I really need their product now that I've been totally suckered.
That's when you go out all in on a startup these days. You're like, Monzo, please don't
please survive.
yeah.
Moving on to, you know, you mentioned it before, but just kind of moving on to leadership for a little bit. You know, do you kind of have a set of principles that you kind of hold yourself to, or like what do you think makes a great leader?
So on the other side of the wall to you, behind you, you won't be able to see it just now, it says on the wall, ask for forgiveness, not permission. So
I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, and I don't have enough headspace. I'm not clever enough that, you know, to be able to dictate what all these people do out there, you know. So I say to everyone, look, you know, go do stuff. You know, I would rather give people autonomy, let them go on, and you know, and people mess up. Yeah, they mess up. I mess up. So you know, come back and like, if we fuck up, ask for forgiveness, but don't come and ask for permission, because if like people come to me all the time, can we do this? Can we do that? We'll never get anything done.
Yeah.
You know? So I suppose that's one thing. I think, you know, as a leader, you just need to. A lot of it is just being kind of trying to look after people and remember that they're human beings as well. You know, a big part of the environment I've created here is I believe environment creates a big effect on people, and And that's not always easy to do if you're a startup and you've not got money, and you've got to do these things bit by bit. But I think put people in a nice environment, look after them, and and I think like a workplace should be a place that you feel safe and comfortable. And we're doing a lot around sort of values at the moment at MadeBrave, and we have this one called "Be Your Weird Self." And
Yeah.
I was actually doing a talk to some kids on Saturday, telling them that the weirdness is cool, like being weird is cool, because
Yeah.
but like I think the underlying message there is that create an environment for people where they can be themselves, where they can be safe, where they can talk about things, where if they're having a challenge, that you're flexible and you work around people. Then I think what happens is it comes back tenfold to you as a business.
Yeah.
Rather than being the person that dictates and pushing to make things happen all the time. So I mean, I don't know if I'm doing it all right. I'm learning every single day. Even being thought of as a leader is like a weird thing to me, because you're just trying to do your thing and
just doing your job. And
yeah,
just
exactly. And
don't really think of it that way.
yeah, but I think you've got to keep on learning and never sort of think you've got it nailed, because there's always new challenges and
As soon as you think that, then it's probably all going to come
tumbling down.
the house of cards will fall down.
Exactly. So.
Not only, obviously you kind of lead MadeBrave and the Born Originals group, but you're like a LinkedIn CV. You are an ambassador or a board director or whatever it may be for many different organizations. Like, how do you kind of, you've got your fingers in many pies. So how do you manage your time between all your kind of commitments and making sure that, it's obviously a bit of a balancing act. So you don't want one to suffer over, because one might need more of attention. So therefore you don't want MadeBrave to suffer and things like that. Do you have a particular routine or habits to kind of help with that?
Yeah, well, I think I'm probably, one of my downfalls is I say yes to too much. And my LinkedIn CV probably shows that. But no, I think I've got a really active brain in terms of I like to learn and I like to put myself in situations, that don't feel comfortable. So I do tend to say yes to a lot, but I think it's because I like to sit in places I'm like, shit, I shouldn't be here. But then suddenly after a few months, you're like, I belong here. I've learned all this, and but I think, in terms of time, again, working back to that kind of empty desk thing, I try to do to try and, that gives me more time. But you've also got to be, I think, there's this kind of encouragement, I suppose, online of this kind of like, you've got to be like hustling for like 20 hours a day and all that kind of stuff.
Get up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that kind of get up at 3 a.m. and I don't know, drink, I don't know, whatever, like, I think
LinkedIn bros.
Yeah, but I think, you have to work hard to create a business and do stuff. Like, so you're going to have to do that extra time, but I think you also need to try and look after your time as well. Like I never work weekends and very rarely work nights. And one thing, maybe a little tip that I can give people that I think is quite good, that like sometimes when you're running a business, like good news comes in, as I say, bad news comes in all the time, and you're kind of just deflecting it and try and do the best with each. But like, I used to always read my emails at night. Right now, what happens when you read your emails at night, right, is that if someone was to hand their notice in, now that happens in a businesses, people move on and change jobs all the time. Now, that's quite stressful though when you're a business owner and someone hands their notice in. Also, when you're the person handing your notice in, let's say it's Friday night and you've got a weekend in front of you. Well, you want to let someone know on the Friday so that you can go off and enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, it's not looming over you.
Yeah, so it's not looming over the whole weekend. Now, if you were that, if I was to read my emails on a Friday night and a bit of bad news came, well, I've suddenly ruined my whole weekend because I can't do anything about it till Monday. So I learned very quickly, don't read your emails at night, because if you get bad news, you just sit and you'll ruin your whole night and you'll sleep. You'll have a terrible sleep and you can't do anything about it. Whereas if you check your emails in the morning, there's a problem or there's something to fix, and what you can do is you can go and fix it.
Yeah.
So, and amazingly, if you don't answer calls and don't answer phone calls in the evening or at weekends, people start to change their behaviours around you. So, they start to realise, Andrew never answers his phone at night. and then you get that time for your family or, your partner or your child.
That's something I definitely need to start.
Yeah.
The word being start. Fucking awful for switch it off. Like, I find it really difficult to like turn off that kind of valve.
Yeah, no, it is tough. It is, but like I always thought, I don't want to look back and be the guy that never saw his son.
Yeah, of course.
So that for me personally, that's kind of how I did it. And then I thought I'll come home and I'll be Finley's dad, and I'll not be Andrew from MadeBrave.
Yeah, no. You know, as somebody who has as many kind of responsibilities and commitments and the business like yourself, sometimes when you talk to people like that, you can like see this pending doom and stress on their face. But are you just one of these guys who like kind of copes well with stress and kind of commitments? Like personally, I feel like I'm quite good at that. Like it's probably because I'm too laid back and horizontal. Like it's probably through a lack of me understanding the severity of the situation rather than actually being able to cope with it well.
Yeah.
Like, do you just cope well with stress, or do you, has it taken its toll at times? And
I seem to have a high tolerance of risk. I'm that guy. Whatever you do, don't let him gamble. When you take me to Vegas, I'm the guy that stays behind. I'm putting the whole house on. It'll be okay, darling. No, I seem to be fine with risk, and I'm quite and I often see the upside of risk. So, and I think that's something you can work hard in a business, but often to grow a business, you really have to take big risks at different points. I think I get stressed. I'm human. I'm like everyone else. I've found myself in tears, not wanting to come into work sometimes with the stress. And, I think the hard thing when you have a business is you can't just hand your notice in. You can't just walk away. Because you've got the whole thing to unravel if you didn't want to be in it.
Yeah.
And I think that can be challenging. That can be hard.
That's never crossed my mind before, actually.
Yeah,
like, you own the business and then you just like need to pack it in. How much would be involved in packing it in?
Yeah, that's it's had me up at nights before. Hey guys, I'm not coming in tomorrow. That's but that's a tough thing to get your head around, because there's hundreds of thousands of pounds at stake of like that you'd have to unravel.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
And there's people's livelihoods, and that pressure can sit quite heavy on your shoulders. And I'm very, very conscious and aware of that it's not just my job. It's 40 odd people's livelihoods and families and children's, and so I think to run a business, you've got to have resilience. You've got to be able to go through that hard stuff and then go again and go again. And that's why I think earlier on I was alluding to the fact that when it's good, you need to bloody enjoy it, because and not feel bad for enjoying it. So buy a nice car. If that's your thing, if you like cars, buy a nice car, because like when it's going hard, it's hard times. So enjoy, and car's not a thing for everyone, but if it's going away, if it's holidays, yeah, like a nice car too. But if it's like going on holidays, and also like just make sure you make time to kind of enjoy it while you're in it as well. Like I say to the guys in here, this is life as well as work. So a lot of the MadeBrave social media, if you've followed it and seen all the kind of stuff we do, it's actually just because we're having fun.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily to drive a sale. It's like, it's often like, well, let's turn the office into a ball pit for the day. And it's like, well, why not? It's life as well as work, so.
No, like, I mean, sometimes do you find yourself that like, do you sometimes just need to take yourself away from it for a couple of days, 1 week, just to kind of press that reset button? Or
no, definitely. I kind of like sort of high adrenaline sports. I used to do like mixed martial arts for years, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I'm now really into mountain biking, and like I like things that you can kill yourself doing. But I think the why I like those things is like when you go and do mountain biking or when you do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you can't think about anything else. You're only in the moment of those things. If you take a wrong turn on a mountain bike, you can tumble down and break your collarbone, much like my friend Tom did recently. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, if you stop thinking about what you're doing, you're getting, or someone's
humbled very
knee
quickly
in the face. I think it's really important to find those things in your life that let you get away, because as much as we're all passionate about growing our businesses or jobs or things, you'll go absolutely insane if you only think about that and you don't have that other thing.
You've obviously recently started your own podcast as well.
Yeah.
we were chatting at a BMA event the other day. It was good to meet somebody who's gone through the same struggles I have. But it's called Just a Chat With, alongside Lewis from Campfire. What was the kind of main motivation for yourselves to kind of start a podcast?
Well, I think much like I was saying earlier, when you get lots of people in your team and you learn things from them, I love that. And I love that actually when you go and do a podcast, like sitting today, I'm learning things from you, I'm feeling inspired. And I think that podcast gives you a platform to go and meet new people. And our podcast is based around branding and creativity. And we kind of said, we kind of want to benchmark that it's people that come on it are the best in class. So I'd quite like to learn from the people that are best in class at branding and creativity, because it helps me personally develop. I'll get inspired, I'll get energy from them. I might make friends with them. It might be opened up to their network. And, Lewis and me, we're not afraid to travel. So we've just kind of like, wherever those podcasts are, if someone says it's San Francisco, you can come, we'll just fly over and do it. And I think much like earlier on, like joining boards and doing all these different things, I think if you put yourself in different situations and keep putting yourself places,
putting yourself out there,
stuff happens. And if you just sit in your little business and you don't do anything, you're going to get the same result. So for us, I suppose it's just a bit of play. It's a bit of getting to travel, getting to meet cool people. And
so what do you think? So like, I kind of help at Edinburgh College, mentoring the design courses, and like one thing I tend to say to them is like, don't like, not everything you do will have like an immediate reaction either. Like, yes, this podcast has exceeded my very low expectation that I had for it to begin with, but like I'm not done. Like, the actual kind of value from it will probably come back around, maybe in a year's time, maybe 10 years time,
Exactly,
or but just got to keep doing it and keep plugging away at it as well.
Yeah, that's it. You meet people and you never know where they're going to spring up again in your
also
life.
gives you a good excuse to reach out to people that you really want to speak to.
Exactly. That's what we've done that. We've created a Google Doc and we've like, who are all the coolest people in the world that we'd like to speak to? And let's try and make our way to doing that. And the world's a small place these days. And I think when you ask people on a podcast, usually they say yes, because it's, who doesn't want to talk about themselves?
It's a steep learning curve though, isn't it? Like it's learning. I mean, I'm by no means good at it.
I think you're doing a great job.
But
this looks professional. This feels professional. This
is a good illusion.
It's been a pleasant conversation.
But it's one of these with any project. If you knew what was involved, like starting a business, if you knew what was involved,
well, you'd never
before
do that.
You'd never buy the podcast equipment. You'd be like, nah, screw this. But no, I'm so glad I have. I mean, I love doing them just because, like yourself, I get inspired by talking to others. I just like talking about these, like the subject matter, whether it's creativity or taking care of yourself or like productivity. Like I'm just fascinated by how people deal with all these things, because some people are rock stars at it. Some people will happily admit that they're shit at it. And it's just kind of like hearing different perspectives is always
exactly. And like when you say the value doesn't necessarily come now, it might be that in 10 years time, like someone's point of view on something has now got value of what they said 10 years ago that you never thought about, so that's always a sort of interesting viewpoint.
Who's at the top of the Google Doc?
The top of the Google Doc.
Who's the unicorn that you want to get on the show?
So I'm a big fanboy of Simon Sinek.
I'm free. I'm available.
You're up next, Gregor. A branding perspective, I really sort of admire Simon Sinek, and he's got the book Starts With Why, and his big purpose-driven brand, and we use a lot of his kind of methodology and thinking here at MadeBrave. So I think it'd be kind of cool. I have sent him a message. He didn't reply. If anyone on here is listening and they know Simon Sinek, maybe they could give him a nudge, point him in the direction of my LinkedIn page. But there's tons, and I've already met like a ton of people that I really aspire to be or to learn from, and but every single podcast I've taken a little golden nugget away, and I think you continue to do so.
Same. Well, I could talk about podcasts forever, but I'm not going to bore people who are listening. Going back to, I suppose, kind of running businesses, like how has a failure, or what I suppose can be perceived as a failure, has actually set you up later for success?
Yeah, I think you're kind of failing all the time, and if you're not failing, you're probably not pushing hard enough. You know, I'm trying stuff in here all the time, and I'm like, oh, that didn't work, and then let's try that again. I mean, I'm trying to think on any major specifics. I mean, I think focus. I mean, I think sometimes, you said earlier on, I do a lot, and I probably, take on too much. And I think there's something in sort of narrowing your focus. I've spoken to a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and it seems to be feedback that you hear a lot is that don't try and do too much. Focus on one thing, do it really well, and then go on to the next one. Yeah,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
think, when you've got a kind of creative brain, it's often like, oh, shiny, oh,
Yeah.
shiny, oh, shiny. And
You're just so eager to get going as well.
yeah, and you're like, I could do a good job on that, and I could do a good job on that, and I could do, and you're seeing all these different things, and what happens is suddenly you've got 40 plates spinning, and you're not doing a very good job of any of them. So I think look after that one plate, and maybe have a couple of plates hanging at the back, but not 40. So
Have you like ever suffered from burnout at all, where you've just been like, I need to take an extended break, not just a day or two, like where you've kind of, because
yeah,
like MadeBrave have kind of moved at a pretty rocket pace.
yeah,
Like, back in 2012, I can probably imagine you didn't imagine in 2019 you'd be where you are.
yeah. No, it moves, yeah, very fast, and yeah, I've probably had burnout quite a few times along the journey. It comes in, different formats, different times. I remember walking in one day, and I can't remember what had happened, but I came into the studio and the roof had burst open, and there was just like water pouring in, and it was pouring all over the top of all these Macs.
Oh my God.
And we were up against deadlines,
Yeah.
and I can't remember what else was happening at the day, but like I looked down at my arms, and my hairs had all just gone up, like spiky on my arms, like gone up, and I went, guys, I don't feel really well. And I felt really sick, and like really physically sick, and and it was just another thing I couldn't deal with.
Yeah.
Almost. And I went, guys, I need to go. And I just walked out the building, into my car. I drove home. My wife was there, and she's like, you okay? And I was like, I just need to go to bed. And I just went to bed, and I slept for like 20 odd hours or something.
Yeah.
And just, my body was like, that's enough.
That was the straw
So-
that broke the camel's back.
So I don't think that's good. So for anyone listening, if you're feeling like that, don't continue. It's important to take breaks. I think, again, I see lots of younger people starting businesses, and they're like, oh, I don't take holidays, I don't take days off. Take days off and take holidays. Like, it's really important. And it's amazing. Every time I've taken a holiday and I've taken 2 weeks off and gone away, I come back and like everyone's really done more than they would do, so it's like,
Yeah.
shit, wow, like I was actually
I should go
hindering
on
it.
holiday more often.
I'm the problem here. So, like people do that. People will amaze you if you give them that opportunity, and and you need that break, and don't feel guilty about it, because usually when I go away, it gives you headspace to start thinking a bit clearly. You get re-energized, and then you come back with ideas much better than you've been doing.
Like I am, happy to throw my hands up and say, like, one of my even like commuting to work, I have like an hour's drive, and I cannot listen to the radio anymore. I have to listen to an audiobook or a podcast, because I feel like it's wasted time
That's right,
otherwise.
I'm right with you.
I'm really bad at sitting and doing absolutely nothing. I'm a massive fidget. I feel like I'm always like, not that I'm not paying attention to people when I'm talking to them or anything like that, but there's times that I'll definitely drift off.
Yeah.
Probably drives the other half up the wall. But like I feel like, when I get home, I need to go get into the garage, do a workout.
Yeah.
And then I'm always having to do something. Like I'm not very good at like really switching off completely.
Yeah.
And that's something I definitely need to work on for sure. And because I think for me, it's not it's looking at it as a bit guilty. Like I feel bad for literally going, oh fuck it, I'm not going to do anything on Saturday. Like I feel like I need to, like even this weekend I said, oh, I've got tons of podcasts, all stuff all organized. I don't need to do anything this weekend. I ended up doing stuff for it, because it was just like I feel like I just needed to like get ahead of the game or whatever.
But that's you relaxing.
But yeah, like I feel like almost bad.
Yeah, but I think you get some people that are like that, and some people that just don't do anything.
Well, yeah.
I think like if you need people that like are like you, that are active learners, and wanting to continue. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think I see a lot of what you're saying in myself as well, and I'm just like, like I've been a magician, a cage fighter, a photographer, a designer, mountain bike now, business now. Like I just have one of these brains. I'm like, I look at someone and go like, oh, if they're doing it, I can go and learn it, like get
Yeah.
on YouTube. And I think that's, what you're describing with yourself. It's not a bad thing. I think it's just making sure that you have that. Yeah. Maybe you don't need downtime. I don't know. What does everyone else think? Put something in the comments below.
Yeah, I know. Do a Twitter poll.
Yeah. But
In the I suppose years that you've been running MadeBrave, what new belief, behavior, habit that you have, technology, or like what new thing has most improved your life?
wow, that's a question. What is most?
Could just be something tiny that gives you like
Don't
half.
grow up. Don't grow up is a trap. Just that mentality of staying young. I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think MadeBrave's a dead playful brand, and people always tell you business has to be serious, and it's serious stuff. But I think, yeah, that idea of not growing up and being playful and not having to conform. I think,
Yeah.
and
Just
yeah.
out of curiosity, like just like what you were saying there, obviously, just like people kind of tell you the business needs to be serious, and yes, there are elements of it that are serious because you have the responsibility to your staff and
Yeah, of
all
course.
this kind of stuff. How how was that? Like your first kind of proper like financials meeting and all this kind of stuff, where it's your brand and you're like still a very playful person, and fair enough. I don't work with you day to day, but you're a very light-hearted, cheery person. It's not like you're total bogged down,
Yeah.
business kind of. Was that a bit of kind of like a learning curve as well? Like learning to like, right, there's times to be playful, then there's times that I need to be
Sensible.
serious face.
Yeah. Oh, do we have to be sensible? Do we have to do this? Yeah, I think maybe another bit of learning then is that I think it's good when you're doing something new, like a business, to have a coach or mentor of some sort. And very much so when I was starting MadeBrave, for the first couple of years, I was hunting for this mentor that could tell me all the answers. And I was looking for, I suppose, carbon copy of me when I'm older. I was looking for someone who'd grown and done the agency thing.
Yeah.
And I met one of the co-founders or the founder of the Leith agency at the time. And I went for lunch. I said, "Can you take me for lunch? I just want to learn from you." And so John Denholm. And I said, "John, I'm trying to soak in all this stuff and learn it all." And I said, "Would you, if you got any advice, could you be my mentor?" He said to me, "Andrew, you've done what took me 10 years in 3 years." He says, "So I think you're doing fine." He says, "You've got the creativity bit nailed. You know it, and stay true to how you're doing it. Just follow that path." And it was at that point I realized that's a great thing John told me. And what I realized then was I'm not going to try and find a mentor that's the same as me. I thought, well, I'm all right with numbers, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not an FD. I'm not a financial person. I said, I'm going to go and look for a mentor that is the polar opposite of me. So I now have a mentor who's a financial director for a really successful business or multiple businesses. And he mentors me. So I go and meet him all the time, and he's polar opposite to me. But the great thing about that is that we can give each other value, because he can teach me things that I'd never thought about of how to structure the business, numbers, things, and likewise in return I can give him advice on marketing and branding, so I'm actually giving him something of use. So that's maybe just something to take away for anyone that's
don't always try and find that.
Don't try and find another version of you. Yeah, sometimes you've got the bit that you've got. And
because like, I mean, not me personally, but I can imagine there's probably some people out there that would be like their go-to thing to go and do, is probably try and find somebody who's quite similar to them that will just tell them that, yeah, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
And that's not really being a mentor. Like a mentor will happily tell you, like, you should be doing this.
Yeah.
Call you out on your mistakes or whatever it may be, and kind of actually help coach you.
Exactly. But I mean, it's not to say that like finding someone who has done it and been there is not good, because I mean, I've now got people who sit on my board that have run agencies in the past, and they are able to tell me, "Andrew, no, you need to tweak those numbers or change that," and like actual practical learning that you have. But I think take your learning or look for learning in places you might not have thought were the automatic place to go to.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a perfect place to wrap up, if there ever was any. Like I said earlier, thank you very much for not even coming on the podcast, but inviting me to MadeBrave HQ.
Thanks
and
for having me.
really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great to finally, we've spoken at TED Talks and things like that in the
Yeah.
past and stuff, but it's great to finally sit down and have a proper chat. But and obviously, where can people find everybody MadeBrave on social handles and all this kind of stuff?
At MadeBrave, or on pretty much every channel.
Yeah.
And if you want to find me specifically, it's at Dobbie Andrew, Dobbie Andrew.
Awesome. So to wrap up, everyone, please head over to the website, the mitmpodcast.com. That's the mitmpodcast.com, where you can find out more about the show, all the different episodes. There's even a link to where you can go and personally support the show as well. Make sure you head over to your favorite podcast platform, hit the subscribe button. That will make sure you get notified when the next episode goes up. While you're there, please leave a review. As per usual, not only does it let me know what you think, but it also helps bring other people into the show too. So that's it from us here. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found some method in the madness.